Imagine discovering an ancient document that vividly describes Jesus' face, written by someone directly involved in the most pivotal events of his life. This is exactly what we find in Pilate's letter, a fascinating and unexpected perspective on the man who changed history. Physical traits described with precision, from the brightness of his eyes to the remarkable tone of his hair. But what makes this so impactful is not just the features, but what they represent. After all, why would Pilate, a Roman governor, feel compelled to write about Jesus' appearance? What did he see that was so extraordinary in a man who, to many, was just a carpenter from Nazareth? These details are not mere curiosities, but clues to a presence so striking it was impossible to ignore. Get ready to uncover a side of Jesus you never imagined, and to understand how his physical image was merely a reflection of something far greater. The description of Jesus, recorded by Pilate in his accounts, reveals traits beyond what we typically imagine. With hair described as light brown or even blonde under certain light, he had a face that conveyed a rare mix of serenity and authority. His eyes, ranging in shades from light brown to blue, held a glow that seemed to see beyond appearances. His fair complexion, often highlighted, reflected a simplicity that captivated both the humble and the powerful. This image, while only a limited glimpse of his essence, is rich in depth and invites reflection. More than aesthetics, Jesus' presence left an indelible impact on those who crossed his path. Pilate described an almost inexplicable aura that made him stand out in any crowd. It wasn't just the harmony of his features that impressed, but the energy he carried with him. Imagine someone who, even without speaking, communicated a profound sense of purpose and peace. This presence didn't intimidate, but comforted, as if each person around him was seen and valued. There was also something curious about the description of his physical traits, the blend of simplicity and uniqueness. While his deep eyes seemed to tell stories of times beyond comprehension, his smile offered instant warmth. Accounts suggest he could walk among the most disadvantaged or before authorities without losing his essence. This makes us ponder the power that a stance aligned with humility and compassion can have in everyday life. This portrait of Jesus, painted with words, is not merely a historical curiosity, but a source of inspiration for reflecting on how we present ourselves to the world. If Jesus, with his striking simplicity, could captivate and inspire crowds, what can we learn from this? This question becomes even more intriguing as we delve into the extraordinary events that marked his journey, as we shall see next. Pilate's accounts, transcribed in a letter that has traversed centuries, describe extraordinary events that resonate to this day. Among them, the crucifixion of Jesus stands out as a moment that united human drama and the supernatural. Pilate mentions how, during the execution, the skies suddenly darkened, as if the universe itself felt the weight of that injustice. The letter describes how crowds gathered, not just seeking answers, but driven by a sense that this day marked something far greater than the story of one man. The text also recounts miraculous episodes performed by Jesus, which gained notoriety even among Roman soldiers. These acts, such as healing seemingly incurable diseases or multiplying food in times of scarcity, were not mere demonstrations of power. They were signs of a broader message of hope and transformation. The impact of these actions was so profound that many, including skeptical leaders, began questioning their own beliefs. What is most striking about Pilate's letter is its tone of admiration, even coming from someone representing the empire that condemned Jesus. He describes a man who, even in the face of physical torture and public humiliation, maintained an inexplicable calm. His refusal to succumb to hatred and vengeance was almost defiant. Imagine facing such adversity with the same moral strength, something many seek in moments of personal crisis. But what truly adds weight to the letter is how it suggests that those events not only transformed Jerusalem, but also sowed the seeds for changes in Rome's own destiny. Pilate hints that Jesus' sacrifice and his message of unconditional love would ultimately shake the foundations of Roman power. This perspective sets the stage for even more astonishing events to come, as described by the guards and eyewitnesses. The accounts of the guards who watched over Jesus' tomb are undoubtedly enigmatic and filled with supernatural details. According to these men, in the early hours of the third day after the crucifixion, a light of celestial origin suddenly appeared, illuminating the sight as if it were daytime. The radiance not only blinded, but conveyed an energy that left them feeling something between fear and awe. Additionally, they recounted that an earthquake shook the region, as though the earth itself reacted to the magnitude of what was happening. These testimonies became even more intriguing with reports that Jesus' body was no longer in the tomb. The guards, trained not to retreat even in the face of mortal threats, were paralyzed when they saw the stone sealing the sepulchre inexplicably removed. There was no battle or any sign of human intervention. It was as if an invisible force had taken control of the scene, leaving a void that spoke louder than any words. The impact of this event was also felt by those closest to it. People who had witnessed Jesus' death claimed to see him alive again, walking among them. These appearances were not vague or subjective. They were real encounters, filled with dialogues, touches, and familiar gestures. Many described how he encouraged them not to fear and to carry forward the message he had shared during his life. These narratives, when combined, form a panorama of events that challenge conventional notions of logic and reality. More than resurrection accounts, they are memories of a moment that forever altered the course of history. The mystery and grandeur of these events led even the most skeptical to question their own understanding. And it is in this context that we move closer to other extraordinary manifestations, such as visions of light and celestial sounds surrounding the empty tomb. Among the most impactful accounts of the events following Jesus' resurrection are the visions and sounds associated with the empty tomb. Witnesses described the presence of celestial music, a melody so pure and harmonious it seemed to touch not just the ears but the soul. This music, they said, didn't come from human instruments but appeared to resonate from a divine source. Soldiers, hardened by the brutality of battlefields, stood motionless, unable to explain what they heard but certain they were witnessing something beyond comprehension. In addition to the sounds, there were sightings of luminous figures, which many identified as angels. These beings, described as radiating intense yet welcoming light, were seen near the tomb. Witnesses claimed these figures not only emitted a presence of peace, but also seemed to communicate something silently, as if a divine message were being transmitted without words. Even the most skeptical were deeply moved, experiencing an internal change they could barely articulate. The supernatural events weren't confined to the tomb's location. Accounts indicate that the celestial light was seen from afar, serving as a sign for those who were distant yet attentive. Some reported feeling the atmosphere around them shift, as if the natural world was in harmony with something spiritual. These manifestations brought an unshakable conviction to many who had previously doubted, showing that even the grandest events can be witnessed in the smallest details. These experiences, lived by multitudes and documented in accounts, reinforce the idea that this moment transcended the physical and spiritual realms. But what stands out the most is how, amid so many demonstrations of power and majesty, the essence of Jesus' message remained rooted in simplicity and love. This humility leads us to the next point, where we will explore how he maintained his mission of peace and kindness even in the face of persecution. Despite all the trials, Jesus remained faithful to a message of simplicity and love, even when facing the harshest persecutions. His life was not based on power or wealth, but on a greater purpose, reaching the hearts of people with a transformative teaching. He spoke of peace, even when religious leaders confronted him with hostility. And while many expected a reaction that matched the injustices he suffered, he responded with forgiveness, challenging the norms of his time and proposing a revolutionary path of compassion. Jesus' detachment from material possessions was more than a philosophy. It was the daily practice of someone who valued people above all else. He was often seen sharing the little he had with those who had nothing. Imagine someone capable of transforming a simple meal into a banquet for hungry crowds, or someone who found time to listen to the most invisible members of society, such as widows, the sick, and children. These acts were like seeds planted, teaching that true wealth lies in sharing. The impact of his message was so profound that it crossed barriers of culture, social position, and even religious beliefs. He challenged authorities not with violence, but with a firm and peaceful stance. This resonated especially with the marginalized, who found renewed hope in him. He made no distinction about who was worthy of receiving his word. Everyone was equally important, from the wealthy to the poor, from friends to enemies. The humility he demonstrated was living proof that true power lies not in dominance, but in transforming the human heart. Even after his death and resurrection, his message continued to grow, spread by those who believed in his cause. His life teaches us that it is possible to resist hatred with kindness and that small acts of love can trigger great changes. Thus, as we reflect on his journey, we are invited to apply these principles in our lives, starting with the small gestures we often overlook. After all, every act inspired by love carries the potential to transform the world around us. Now that you are familiar with the surprising details described in Pilate's letter, it is time to reflect. How can a person's appearance and presence carry so much meaning? Jesus not only marked his time, he transcended barriers and touched hearts in a way that still echoes today. But here is the most fascinating part. It wasn't his physical traits that transformed lives, but the way he lived and connected with those around him. What does this teach us about the impact we can have? So I ask you, how can you apply this inspiration in your daily life? Could it be time to look beyond appearances and invest in actions that truly matter? Think about it and start now to transform your life and the lives of those around you. And of course, if you want to keep learning about topics that change the way we see history and ourselves, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Let's explore the extraordinary together.